All right. So, welcome to the podcast with Data Professor. I'm Chenin, and this is Misra. And before we begin the podcast, Misra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me here today, Tanin. So I'm Misra Torp. I am currently the creator behind the YouTube channel So You Want to Be a Data Scientist. Though I think I changed the name to Misra Torp, so that's easier to find because I feel like So You Want to Be a Data Scientist is a long name. I Before I started doing that, I was a data scientist in international companies. Some of them were IBM, for example, and then for a while, I worked at smaller companies like startups, again as a data scientist. And after a while, I've realized that I want to teach people rather than practice data science hands on every day in the industry. And I wanted to help people get into the data science industry or get into the data science profession. So I started making content, blog posts, podcasts, videos on YouTube. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And very recently, like 6 months ago, I joined Assembly AI as a developer educator too. So those are the two things that I'm doing right now.
That's very cool. Yeah, actually, I remembered your channel. So you want to be a data scientist
Hmm.
on YouTube. I think it's the algorithm suggesting the video from your channel, and then like later on, I tried to search that channel, and then I couldn't find it.
Mm.
And then there was another channel called Misra Turp, and I'm like, wait, is that the owner of that YouTube channel? And then I checked again. Okay, yeah, it is because
Yeah.
you also have like a link to your website as well.
Yeah, exactly. That was the name of my business, and I did not actually start YouTube uh, as the goal of becoming a YouTuber. I was just thinking, okay, as part of my business, I can also have video content, and that's why it was the name of the business. But after a while, I realized, okay, this might be a little bit too hard for people to find, and I also wanted for myself to be the forefront of that channel, so that's why I changed it to my name.
Cool. Yeah. And yeah, you mentioned about like creating a business around, so you want to be a data scientist. How was that? Like, is it difficult to create that business? Did you have to like prepare any like formal business registration or how was that journey?
Yeah, sure. So at first, it was just making content, just because people were asking me questions. I was getting questions on LinkedIn, like, "Oh, I see that you're a data scientist. What can I do? Here's my background." And at first, I was trying to help people one by one, but after a while, it got a little bit too much. So then I figured, oh, why don't I write a blog post? So I started writing blogs. And then a friend of mine told me back at where I was working that she would be happy to actually be interviewed and to talk about her journey too. So I was like, okay, let's do a podcast. So I started doing the podcast. And after a while, I realized that people also want to learn in a more structured way. So that's when I made my first online course where people could actually pay money to buy it. And when money is getting involved, you have to start an actual company. So then, yeah, I had to go to the Dutch authorities here where I live in the Netherlands to start a one-person company. It's called here. So it's not as complicated to start a whole company, but still there is some paperwork that needs to be done. You have to get a tax number, etc., and then you can start receiving money from clients or whoever you're giving your services to online.
Mhm. Right. And was that during your time as a data scientist working full time, or did you quit and then started your business full time?
Well, actually, it was during that time, but right when I was registering my business, I went to my company and I told them, hey, look, I want to turn this side hobby that I'm doing into a actual company and make money with it, just so you know. But then they said that they do not agree with that, and I should not do it. So they did not want
Mhm.
me to have a side job or a side hustle. So then I made the decision after a while to quit because I realized that I actually really like teaching online and I wanted to see this going further. So then I changed jobs to and went to a different company for that.
Right. And you mentioned that you're also working as a developer advocate. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? And how does that kind of like brought you back into tech?
Yeah, so that was actually such a chance encounter because last year at the end of summer, I've decided to quit my day job and just take my business seriously, make more online courses, really focus on YouTube, try to grow my audience, and just have more time to ideate about the courses that I can make, the videos that I can make, be more involved in the community. And I was doing just that. And I was building my YouTube channel when I got an email from Assembly AI, where they said that they've been following me and they really like the way that I teach, the way I make content, and they wanted me to be part of their marketing team. And at first I was like, no, 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 I'm doing my own thing, but I'm good here. So I only started doing one video per week for them for a while. But, working with them, I just realized that it's a kind of like a family company that I've never had before. And I'm definitely not one of those people who are like, oh yeah, my coworkers are like family to me and like work like crazy, like 60, 70 hours. Not like that, but like they are actually really really nice people that I enjoyed having around, enjoy talking to a couple of times a week because it's a remote company. And yeah, and after a while I've decided, you know what, it seems like a really good fit, a fit that I've never had in my life before, so I can give it a chance to get into it full time and see what comes out of it. And it's been 6 months and I'm very very happy with my decision.
Yeah, that's a very inspiring story. Yeah, so it's very inspiring to hear about your content creation journey, how you transition from a data scientist to a business owner, and then
Mhm.
back to a developer advocate. Could you take us back to the time when you were in college? Could you tell us a bit more about your educational background?
Sure. So I'll tell you more the story version of it. So basically, when I started college, I did not know what I wanted to study or what I wanted to major in. My school was the kind of school that you could choose your major 2 years in your education, but mainly people chose it on the second year, so like 1 year in. And I was just taking classes from different majors, and after I took my first computer science course, I kind of realized that, yeah, this is a thing for me because it got me really excited. I loved learning about coding. And even though it was kind of like a hard language that we were learning, we started with C. I still kind of really fell in love with it. And I realized that that's the angle that I want to follow in my life. And towards the end of my studies, I took a artificial intelligence course. And that course was not really machine learning. We had a separate class for machine learning, which was my least favorite class ever, by the way. But this artificial intelligence class, we were talking about, the Jeopardy robot or the all these different technologies that were made in the recent years that really shocked people. And it shocked me too. So I got really interested in it. So that's why I did my master's also in a similar topic, again in computer science, but specializing in big data. And yeah, and after a while, I've realized that I want to become a data scientist. I want to work as a data scientist. So then I started taking internships where I could do the job of a data scientist, even though my studies were more on the engineering side. Yeah, and after 2 years of doing my master's, doing my internships, I got an offer from IBM to start working there as a data scientist. So that's kind of how my computer science evolved into data science quite organically.
That's amazing. And prior to accepting your role over at IBM, have you done any internship prior to that?
Yeah, I was actually at IBM also before that. So, well, it was kind of like during my studies, I just got into IBM as a work experience student. And then I don't remember how long I was there in total, but I think it was like 1.5 years or something like that, where I did some work experience. We did, so there was a place called Center for Advanced Studies at IBM in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam office, where you just get to be free and do interesting projects with the help of supervisors who are experienced in the field. So that was kind of like candy shop for me. You just go there, you come up with a project. They had some robots lying around, and then you can just build a project out of that. That's also how I did my master's thesis too. Just kind of come up with a project there, and sometimes it fits a client's need, then you do it with a client, which is a bit more exciting. Sometimes you do it more on an academical reason, and then maybe you publish a paper even. So yeah, that's how I got into more on the AI side. Also, during my bachelor's, I did an internship. That's also what got me excited about AI. I was working with a research group in Madrid at the University of what I don't know how to say it in English. Third Carlos, University Carlos Tercera, I think was the name in Spanish. And there we were. Well, they already had a project of a robot helping children with cerebral palsy train. So then
Mhm.
I kind of made like a spin-off project on top of it. So like all of these little projects in real life, a little bit academic, a little bit with companies, got me really excited about data science and machine learning in general.
Awesome. Yeah, could we take you back to like the first time you learned coding? When was that? Was it during your college years as an undergraduate?
Yeah, it was my first year in college. Before that, I didn't know anything about coding. I really didn't think that I would be interested in it, but it was my first CS 101 class that I took where I coded a bit.
Cool. What language was that?
It was C++. Plus plus. That's what I started with.
Right. And how about Python or R? Have you picked that up during university, or is it as a hobby?
Python started in university with the artificial intelligence class that I mentioned. And I remember
Hmm.
being completely overwhelmed and unable to do my assignments because I was so into the C++ mentality of writing code. I really
Hmm.
didn't know what to do with Python, even though it's the simplest thing in the world, like compared to a language like Java or C++. So I remember just like being in a state of nearly crying because I have an assignment due in an hour. I still couldn't figure out how to properly do it. But after a while, I got the hang of it. So then it was fine. Then I realized, what? Why am I writing code in C++ when there's something like Python exists? So that was in college. And during my master's, also, I had to do some assignments with R for the big data engineering program that I was a part of. But yeah, R kind of, I could probably, if someone put a gun to my head, I could program in R, but like that is not my preferred option.
Amazing. Yeah. And if you could provide some tips for beginners into coding, what would that be?
Yeah, with coding, I would say to practice a lot. I mean, I say this for everything, but at the end of the day, it is a very practical skill. It is not really about, watching video lessons only. Like, if you could try to build a project, for example, no matter how small, no matter how simple, just start with something. And as you build and as you break and as you fix, I think you learn a lot about how that programming language works. So definitely take some online courses, follow some people on YouTube, watch their tutorials, but at the same time, try to build something. And I tried this and I know it because I was trying to learn React at some point, and that's what I did, and it actually worked. I took this course, I don't remember the name, but the course's idea was basically to take you from not knowing anything to building a certain app. And we
Hmm.
just went step by step building the app, at first building a very simple version and then making it more complex as we went into the course. That's why I feel like it's the simplest way to learn. Just like get in there, get your hands dirty.
Right. And how do you escape from like this so-called tutorial hell? How can you create your own projects? Like
Yeah.
graduating from projects that are from YouTube videos or
Yeah.
courses.
Yeah. So one thing that I did, uh, not sure if that will work for everyone, was instead of going the YouTube route, I tried to take either a book that I know is respected in the field, because when you go like, oh, which book to read for this and this topic, and then you see 5 or 6 out of 10 people recommend the same book, then it's a respected book in the field, or a course that has good reviews that I can take online. But reviews can also be, if someone doesn't know anything about programming and then they learn a little bit, they might still leave a good review. So what I do instead is I learn a little bit about what is involved in this topic. So again, with the React example, for example, I go and try to find keywords. What are the things that one needs to learn when they want to say, I know how to code in React? And I write all of them down, or at least keep it in my brain somewhere. So then when I'm looking at courses and when I look at their syllabus, then I can look for those keywords and see how much of it covers. Sometimes, if it covers everything, that's also not a good thing. So maybe they're not going to go in detail enough. But so just kind of doing your research a little bit into what is involved in learning this thing, this task at hand, and then comparing it to the content of these courses or books or YouTube videos that you want to follow, and then taking them on rather than just like going to the thing that has the best reviews or the most reviews is my own strategy to learning something new.
Cool. Yeah, I also do something similar to what you're doing, like kind of like shopping around for various courses or books,
Hmm.
taking a look at the curriculum, taking a look at the table of contents, creating
Hmm.
a personal roadmap, which you're doing. And yeah, I think it's kind of like you're internalizing all of the available options, all of the
Hmm.
topics that are floating around, and actually kind of like um, taking from several parts and then compiling it into your very own personal roadmap. And I guess the process of
Definitely.
doing that kind of internalize it somehow and make you engage
Yeah.
in the learning process. Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
I guess then you take a bit more of an active stance
Hmm.
towards it rather than just being like, someone should prepare a course that is perfect for my background and my
Exactly.
experience. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Hmm. And yeah, not really like technical question, but how do you spend your time? Do you like, for example, do you take some time off, or like how do you tune out of coding, like this coding mindset, and how do you relax and so that you can feel refreshed when
Mm.
you're going back to coding or creating content videos?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't think I do it enough. I should definitely do it more. But generally, there are a bunch of things that I like to do or I push myself to do. One of them is going to the gym uh, every other day. And I try to keep it to a schedule rather than asking myself, like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? I'm just like, no, if I didn't go
Mhm.
yesterday, I'll go today, sort of thing. Just kind of that really helps me clear my mind. I
Mhm.
try to go on walks more or less every day if I have the time, which doesn't happen every day. But I just went on a walk before this talk, for example, just to kind of get some fresh air. Yeah, and I just generally like to do sports. So I
Mhm.
really, especially after sitting down in front of the computer, I really need that active time. So I try to go outside. Either I just got a new skateboard, for example, just like go on my
Cool.
skateboard, just trying to learn it. Go to the gym occasionally, like maybe hang out with my friends and just physically be active, and that's how I can come back and still be fresh and still do the work.
Cool. And I see that you have a guitar in the background.
Oh.
Do you also play guitar?
Yes, I was learning for a while.
Cool.
I think it was right before the pandemic or
Hmm.
something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I got to a good level, but as I
Cool.
said, I'm a little bit physically, uh, what do you say, like anxious. I need to move. So
Hmm.
I guess after a while, I was like, okay, this is too much sitting. Yeah.
Yep. And how did you learn to play the guitar?
I took an online course too, actually.
Hmm.
I again forgot the name, but there is this really good website. It could be like Jason Guitar, something like
Hmm.
that, where this guy made a whole website. It's just an online course, starting from scratch, starting from how you hold the guitar to all the chords and
Hmm.
everything. And you don't have to pay him, but if you want, you can donate some money, because I mean he made an amazing system where you go like step by step. He also has um, chords of very famous songs, or actually a lot of
Hmm.
songs that you can play with together with him and everything. So that's how I did it. I was just sitting
Cool.
down every day 1 hour following his lessons, and then practicing a little bit by myself, trying to get the songs that I love the most out. But I tried some Johnny Cash
Cool.
songs, and it
Hmm.
wasn't possible. They're going too fast.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was wondering, like, is it like the same or similar mindset of when you're learning data science or learning coding, learning how to
Hmm.
play guitar? Does it have the
Yeah.
same system?
Yeah, that's very interesting actually, because one of the reasons that I chose computer science was because I liked
Mhm.
that I was working with my hands. So
Mhm.
obviously it's not like being a carpenter, but you're still kind of working with your hands, coding on the computer, right? So yeah, well now your question kind of like made a curious connection in my brain now. And you think about it, I think it is similar because again, you're doing something with your hands, and it's a lot about your hand and brain connection. I guess learning the guitar is a bit of a simpler way of learning that, but still kind of similar because you have to kind of understand how everything is connected and what's going to happen if you do a certain movement. So, yeah, really, really
Right.
interesting catch there.
Right, and then you mentioned like when you're learning to play the guitar, you're playing your favorite song, so that kind
Uh
of
huh.
like gives you motivation to want to learn more how to play it, and
Hmm.
like and then you practice some more. Like I guess it's quite similar to data science when you're solving problems that affect you. Like maybe you could analyze
Hmm.
data from your Netflix or Spotify
Hmm.
listening history, and then if it
Yeah,
affects you, then you just want to you know do more about it, learn more about it. And I guess
exactly.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it's probably like this learning philosophy or pedagogy
Hmm.
that could be like translated to another topic or skill.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, and especially also with data science, since I learned how to deal with data, I really feel
Hmm.
like I have been given a superpower because it is really something else to be able to understand this piece of mumbo jumbo in front of you, turn it
Right.
into understandable terms, and also even communicate it to other people. So really highly so when you're doing a project that is close to your heart or something that
Hmm.
interests you. But I think even with something that you are not interested, just being able to get value out of something that is so worthless by itself in its raw form, I think is just fascinating.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned about like working on something that might seemingly seem like it's useless. I
Hmm.
came across this post by Kenji on LinkedIn, and then he mentioned about like how can you add a spin to a old or boring data set, like
Hmm.
the iris data set. How could you make it more
Hmm.
exciting? Um, so I guess one of the I think it was a student who I think she made like a twist of the typical old and boring data set, and then
Hmm.
she added her spin to it. And I can't remember the exact details, but then it kind of brings perspective. Like you could make something that looks ordinary into something that's like
Hmm.
amazing just by changing the angle of the data
Hmm.
a bit, and kind of
Yeah.
like making that or translating, amplifying the message from that, and then kind of like
Hmm.
comparing it with the real world. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting post on LinkedIn. And yes, and I mean your answer about like a seemingly boring task
Hmm.
could be viewed as a complicated, intricate, or interesting
Hmm.
problem if you kind of
Hmm.
look at it in a different angle.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think for data scientists, because we do it like every day, it
Mhm.
is kind of mundane to us. We don't realize how mind-boggling that is. But
Right.
from my time when I was working at corporate companies, the big companies, you should see the spark in people's eyes when you present something to them, and they had no idea, and they were just so surprised with the results and so surprised with the fact that you can get something like that out. And yeah, it's really fascinating work. I think we're not doing it
Nice.
justice.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I guess like the motivation factor of kind of like answering the right questions brings joy to the people who are affected by the problems.
Hmm.
And if you could engage with the people who are affected by the data problem that you're working on, I guess it kind of brings you joy. I
Yeah.
guess in a similar fashion um, as content creation as well. Like if you're training the next generation of data scientists and they later on become a data scientist,
Yeah,
from your curriculum, it kind of is heartwarming for the content creators.
definitely. Yeah. So, when I get comments or emails like that, where people are like, hey, I've been following your channel since you started, and I wanted to become a data scientist. And today I signed my first job offer. It just makes me so happy. No view count, no subscriber count can make me that happy. It's just seeing that the things that I have to say help people somewhere. It's just an amazing connection for me.
Amazing, yeah. And actually today on Twitter, I've also posted something similar
Oh, yeah,
of
I
a
saw. Yeah.
subscriber. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's very heartwarming and kind of gives you joy to continue the content creation. And I guess it also answers your question about how do you get motivated and
Hmm.
like doing so many things at the same time. And I guess that's one
Yeah.
of the inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's also easy to forget when you're creating content and you're constantly focused on what should I talk about? How am I going to present this in the best way? And then you see, oh
Hmm.
yeah, this many people watched it, this many people clicked on it, and then you're like working with numbers, but then you
Right.
forget that people on the other side are actual people and you're
Hmm.
actually helping them get to somewhere in their lives. And I think it's also a um specific connection that you get with
Hmm.
people because I think many people can talk about the topic, but I feel like everyone has their own way of learning and their own
Hmm.
way of connecting with a teacher.
Hmm.
So if you can make that connection, if the way you teach something speaks to someone else and you manage to teach them something that maybe they talked about or they learned from many other people, but it never clicked and you make it click,
Hmm.
I think that's
Right.
just a very special thing. It just, as you said, makes me very happy, makes us very happy.
Right. Yeah. And I guess sometimes, or most of the time, we also learn from our viewers as well,
Hmm.
or the students as well. Like when I was
Definitely.
teaching in the university or making videos on YouTube, like comments, questions. Most of the time, I don't know the exact answer, and I could just kind of like, based on my opinion, this is what I think. Or if
Hmm.
it's something that I don't know, I would explore that further after
Hmm.
the lecture or the talk,
Yeah.
and then read about it, Google about it, and then the next time when a new student asks the same question, and then, hey, I got asked that one before, and then I could
Hmm.
then provide the answer. It's kind of like, yeah, it's a fun journey of learning and yeah, teaching and learning at the same time.
Definitely. Yeah, it's also nice to see how people are thinking and which angle they're coming from. And,
Hmm.
yeah, when maybe you get a question in one of your videos, and then when you're making a similar video next time, you probably remember that and you explore that further. So, as you said, yeah, it also gives you a lot of new perspectives of what is
Hmm.
worth learning, what is worth going
Hmm.
after. So, yeah, that's very valuable.
Right. And also, I guess like teaching the same topic multiple times, like
Hmm.
in the university where I had to do like the same lecture like multiple times, like
Hmm.
maybe in a week, twice or three times to a different cohort. It kind of, like each time would be slightly different. And then like the later times would be, I guess, a little bit better than the first time because it's kind of like you
Hmm.
get to explore the same topic. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like to use this metaphor like when you're looking at a tree, the first time you might see a tree, and if you look at the same tree the second time, you might notice the ants moving up the tree. And then if
Hmm.
you look at it the third time, you might notice that the ants are, engaging, communicating somehow. And it's like every time you look at the same object, you're going to see something new.
Hmm.
And I guess that's like the magical part of, like teaching or doing content creation. You're doing the same thing, and then
Hmm.
you're improving like maybe 1% each time, or
Hmm.
you're getting better. Although you might
Definitely.
not feel like you're getting better, but yeah, if you compare like first, for example, myself like 3 years ago, I had no experience doing video editing. Right now, video editing is not really good, but it's a little bit better than
Hmm.
before. But still, I have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
In
No,
terms of
that's a
video
really good
editing,
point.
engaging. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I realize that also sometimes. For example, I record a video and let's say I forgot to turn my microphone on. So, like, I have to re record it. But then when I re record it, I do it so much better. And it's
Mhm,
kind of annoying because I don't want to record every video twice or three times. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how, as you practice a new topic, but also practice
mhm,
the way you present it. As you said,
mhm,
practice the video editing. You just add something a little bit more on top of it, right? Like I try
right.
to add a different transition, maybe add a sound effect to make it a bit more
Mhm,
engaging for people. And yeah, it's just like little baby steps that we're taking, where none of us are really like professional video editors at the end of the day.
right. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's such an amazing journey, like for various YouTubers to kind of like how did they learn the skills of the trade? Like,
Mm-hmm.
was it during their college years? Did they do any
Mm-hmm.
projects where they had to use video editing skills?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like it's multifaceted if you compare it to like data scientist. Like becoming a data scientist would require like technical, non-technical, soft skills,
Mm-hmm.
programming, math,
Yeah.
stats. I mean, there's so many, and I guess the same is also with a YouTuber, video editing, storytelling, content
Mm-hmm.
creation, like all of this things. It kind of made me think like it's it's quite similar in the sense that I mean, in terms of philosophical viewpoint, learning
Mm-hmm.
something has this like framework from which you could kind of like as you mentioned, creating your own personal roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like figuring out like what are the topics that you need to explore in order to do that job
Mm-hmm.
sufficiently, and bringing relating back to myself is like when I make the jump to leave academia. I mean, there's a lot of things to learn, and it's kind of like I'm reinventing myself. Um, like kind of like a I don't know, like I have to pick up everything from scratch,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, so kind of like leave the comfort zone, and
Yeah.
then embrace learning and a lot of grinding. Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
it's really fun.
Yeah. But that's how you grow at the end of the day. You have to do things that scare
Exactly.
you.
Hmm. Right. And yeah, so speaking of becoming a data scientist, so your tagline, so you want to become a data scientist.
Hmm.
What are your recommendations for aspiring data scientists? How could they break into the field and become a data scientist?
Yeah. So my go-to advice is first understand what you want from this job, because when I talk to people, I realize most of the time people don't actually want to become data scientists. They want to become, for example, a machine learning engineer, or they want to become a data analyst actually. So the first thing I would do if the thought pops in their heads is to go and educate themselves about what is the responsibilities of a data analyst, data scientist versus data engineer or machine learning engineer, for example. Of course, these titles are interchangeable. Some companies use them a bit flexibly. That's a separate topic, but generally to understand what they should aim for, because all of these things have different requirements for skills. If you're going to be a data analyst, probably you don't really need to know much about machine learning. Whereas if you want to become a data scientist, you do need to learn about machine learning, maybe even a bit more advanced deep learning techniques based on the job you want to get. So after doing that, I would tell them to understand, like I said, how I do my research when I'm taking online courses. What are the skills that are involved, and what is the level of these skills? I do actually have a nice mini online course that I give out for free. I can send you the link to share with your audience also, where I have a list of skills that I have identified as level one, level three, two, level two I'm sorry, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and level 1 is the things that you definitely should know at first, so that you can build up to level 2 skills and then level 3 skills, for example. And that way, you do not just jump on learning how RNNs work before you even know how to split a training and testing data set and why you should do that, right? So that's the second thing that I suggest them to do: just build their skills in a calm and organized manner. And lastly, I would suggest them to do projects, like I said, also with the coding example, because again, this is a very practical profession. And especially if you want to get a job and not just have data science skills, you have to show people that you've done projects on this and you know what you're talking about. So, a project maybe just to show that you know about PCA, a project where you show that you know what regularization does, for example, just to kind of show your skills and show that you know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm saying this based on the interviews I've been a part of, where I was the interviewee, but also where I was the
Mhm.
interviewer, where I was
Mhm.
listening to people's presentations and seeing the questions that came from other data scientists and what they wanted to see. So yeah, 3-step progress basically is always what I tell people. Just make sure that you know which area you want to go in, then make sure that you know the skills that you need to gather, and then gather them, and then make sure that you do projects to prove your skills.
Amazing, amazing. And I like the fact that you mentioned about learning in a calm and organized manner. Could you
Mm-hmm.
amplify that a bit?
Sure. Yeah, I know that from myself because I was not a calm and organized learner. I was so panicked to learn about like LSTMs, and I wanted to learn about like computer vision, and I didn't even know how to do a proper data science project. I didn't really know what came first. Should I do data exploration? What is involved in data exploration? Or what does it even mean to have an outlier, and how do you properly deal with it, for example? So those are things that are little things, but they are very important to the product that you're building, because at the end of the day, most algorithms right now are packaged already in a library. So you don't have to build
Mhm.
the algorithm, but you do have to prepare the data. That's like a good amount of the job. So that's why I tell people, looking back to myself when I was learning, to not be panicked, because it was a lot of stressful moments for me. I was trying to learn how RNNs worked, not knowing the general data science pipeline, and then it was really stressful. I couldn't understand it, and I came close to points where I felt like giving up. So if you don't want to end up at a point where it feels like too much and you're giving up, I think then you should just build up slowly into the data science
Right.
world.
Cool. Yeah. Slowly and calm in a calm fashion.
Yeah.
It kind of
Yeah.
led me to this picture of this poster, like keep calm, like,
Yeah.
and then
Definitely.
learn in an organized
Yeah.
manner. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. And I like the fact that you compare like learning into like three layers, and that
Mhm.
kind of made me think about this onion, like with the different
Mhm.
layers. And yeah, I like that you're arranging, suggesting students to learn like start with the basics, right? Like the baby
Mhm.
steps, to crawl, and then you can walk, and then you could fly afterwards.
Mhm. Definitely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so can we perhaps shift into a bigger, high level question,
Mhm.
like why do we need data scientists?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like the general attitude in industry, especially, is that soon we will not need data scientists. But I think the reason that we need data scientists still in the field right now is the same as the reason that I love data science. It's the creative part of the job.
Hmm.
Because, as I said, most libraries and most algorithms are already implemented somewhere. You just need to call it with just one line of code, right? You just need to kind of more
Hmm.
or less know how it works. But even like hyperparameter optimization, things like that, they can be automated. That's not the hardest thing in the world. You just need a strong computer. And but as I said, the part that takes up the most work is preparing the data and making sure that you create value from it. I guess this that matters less for deep learning, but more for
Hmm.
traditional machine learning, where you really have to make sure that your data is ready to be taken advantage of. There are no
Hmm.
outliers, there are no missing values that are going to break your training progress, or you maybe created some new features that are going to be helpful for the project at hand. So those little
Mhm.
creative solutions that you came up with during the data
Mhm.
preparation process, I think, is exactly why we still need data scientists, and we will need data scientists in the future.
Right. Yeah, that's a great answer, and I highly agree with like I like the area where you explored about feature engineering,
Hmm.
and that requires a lot of the domain expertise.
Hmm.
Like for example, if you're applying machine learning into biology, like I mean, if we're not focusing into the proper like biological aspect, we might be
Hmm.
asking the wrong answer, or if we're not considering certain aspect, then we might not be properly like featureizing or
Hmm.
describing the object of our interest. And yeah, I
Definitely.
mean, improvements to model could be done by exploring deeper into the domain and the feature, of course. And can we then zoom out a bit and ask this question: what is data science, and who is a data scientist?
Wow, that's a tricky question. I should not be expected to answer it by myself. But so, what is data science? It is really hard to say, I think, because data science, for me, if I need to summarize it in one sentence, it would be that the practice of understanding and manipulating data in a way that you can get value out of it. And this value can manifest itself in terms of, being able to be used in a machine learning algorithm, but it could also be insights and, infographics or just general presentation. So that's what I would say data science is. But I don't think data science is limited to that. There is, I think, a lot more to data science than just manipulating and understanding data. And I think a data scientist is someone who has equipped themselves with the skills to understand, alter, but also communicate the data to people who might not have firsthand experience with dealing with data. I think that works.
Yeah, I really agree. Yeah, it's a great definition of data science and data scientists. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, in terms of like the overlapping of like the various skill sets of data professionals,
Mhm.
there might be a misunderstanding. Like for example, I've drawn a infographic summarizing that data scientists should be able to analyze data, storytelling. They should be able to
Mhm.
do programming. They should be able to use machine learning,
Mhm.
or data engineering. They should be able to collect, manipulate, pre-processed data. Um,
Mhm.
looking at the infographic, a lot of the people are seeing that data scientists seem to be able to do everything. What are your thoughts about that? And
Yeah.
is that true,
Yeah.
or is it a myth?
I I think it is true, but one nice thing is that data scientists do not have to be experts in all of these things. They just need to know it good enough, especially when it comes to soft skills. You do not have to be an amazing marketer or seller. You just need to have the basic skills of communicating, which are basically understanding the perspective of the person sitting in front of you and being able to communicate to them effectively without confusing them or overwhelming them, basically, which is, you can call it really simply communication skills, but of course it's only a part of communication skills. So I see data scientists as people who should be well-rounded. Basically, they cannot just be like, leave me alone, I'm going to do my code, or leave me alone, I'm going to prepare my presentation. They really have to be to be able to work in a team, to communicate their findings, to communicate their approach, and justify basically every step of the way, what the steps that they're taking. And also they need to be able to code, of course. So
Hmm.
I
Right.
agree with your infographic. I have to say data scientists have to know a lot of different types of skills.
Hmm. Right. And yeah, and like sometimes I would think of like the infographic in a like in a different from a looking at it from a different angle.
Hmm.
Like for example, if you're looking at the skill sets, you're comparing it, you could use probably a radar plot. But
Hmm.
then if you take a deeper look, like the level of depth that you would be able to like master. Like for example,
Mhm.
if you're a data scientist versus a data analyst versus a data engineering, um, like in terms of the level of expertise, for example, in programming, obviously you would be expected to know more programming,
Mhm.
going from a data analyst to a data scientist.
Mhm.
There's also machine learning engineer as well.
Mhm.
Um, if you're looking at the topic of machine learning, probably the machine learning engineer would have a greater level of expertise than a data scientist, but not
Mhm.
always the case, but
Yeah.
generally, and probably more than a data analyst. In terms
Mhm.
of storytelling, data analysts would have a higher level expertise. Data scientists maybe a slightly lower or higher. Like
Mhm.
there's always this variance, plus minus some SD value.
Yeah.
I mean that's just a thought. If I were to create a new version of the infographic.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Because, at the end of the day, it depends on what your job is focused on. And as a data analyst, yes, a big part of your job is going to have to explain something and tell a story to the people sitting in front of you. This could be stakeholders from your own company, maybe a client, right? So, yeah, of course, then you need to know that a little bit better than a data scientist, whereas a data scientist might be able to code a bit better than you, or probably a lot better than you.
Right. And I guess like all of the data professionals when working together will
Hmm.
yield the most value, create the most
Hmm.
value for the organization, because like different professions are adding different
Yeah.
values to the same problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess the collaboration amongst these data professionals would be better than just a single professional working alone.
Definitely. Yeah, and I would definitely warn people against taking jobs where they are expected to do everything by themselves. Because,
Mhm.
some companies would just say, okay, we're hiring a data scientist, but then they want you to do the engineering job. They want you to do the
Mhm.
maintenance of the models. They want you to also be the person who is the data analyst and presenting findings. So just make sure when you're entering a company that you are not being taken advantage of.
Right. Or also fixing the printer as well.
Yeah, exactly. Fixing the printer, helping people with lost passwords.
Right. Yeah, I guess actually at the beginning of the video I was intending to ask you in a reverse order, like starting from what is
Hmm.
data science, what is a data scientist,
Hmm.
and then actually we started backwards and started with your content creation journey to your
Yeah,
profession to your educational background back to what is data science.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, would you like to leave a concluding remark, maybe introducing us back to your content creation?
Sure. I would tell people that they should just build in public. If there is anything that being a data scientist and then being a content creator has taught me, you cannot believe the doors that it opens you to just show yourself out there, put yourself out there, either in forms of blogs, in forms of GitHub repositories, YouTube videos. So if you're learning something and if your goal is to be recognized, definitely put something out there, make it public, share it with your friends, and then see what kind of doors it can open to you.
Solid advice. Yeah. And thank you very much for being on the podcast and hope to have you on the future podcast as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Chen, and it
Yeah.
was
Bye.
lovely.